The camera, McManus Woodend played the role of the Geico Caveman for a decade, appearing in well over 25 national commercials as the iconic character. Additional roles include the Netflix films The Kindergarten Teacher, the Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, and the incredible Jessica James. Behind the camera, McManus co-created the feature-length motion picture Rocksteppy, which had its world premiere at the second Sound Unseen Film and Music Festival, as well as New York and Los Angeles theatrical premieres in late 2017. The treatment for his follow-up feature film, Kingdom, was selected and presented at the IFP Film Conference. Dr. Woodend is currently an assistant professor of digital media at the University of Southern Indiana. He received a PhD in literary, musical, and critical thought at the European Graduate School, is a filmmaking graduate of the David Lynch Graduate School of Cinematic Arts, and holds undergraduate degrees from the Film Production and Entertainment Business programs at Full Sail University. Welcome, McManus Woodend, to the University of Rochester's Conversations, Art and Cinema. Let's hear it for McManus.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's so good to be with you again virtually. Can't wait to see you in person soon.
Yes, absolutely.
The first thing we have so many students that have so many questions that I think I might only even ask one or two and then just hand it off to them. Because our Rochester students, they are really ready to ask you everything, I can tell. So I'm going to get out of the way here. But one thing for me I wanted to ask about was with Rocksteppy. It's such a heartfelt. Oh, who's that? So big now. Amazing.
This is my son, Romer. It is still in the 80s here, so he has decided that a shirt is just not something he's into today.
That's okay. Hi, Romer.
This has been my digital assistant since I was teaching back in the COVID days. And he would toddle up and always want to come and say hello to anyone that I was talking to on Zoom. So we can't break that streak. We got to continue up with it.
It's so good to see you. Hi, Romer. I can't wait to meet you in person. We're gonna hang out together, okay?
Yeah,
we're gonna
absolutely.
play a lot, and maybe I'll bring one of my cats, and you can play with my cats. Would you like that, Romer? Yeah? Okay, that sounds good. And maybe we can make a movie with your dad together. We can all make a movie. Yeah?
Oh, he's ready. He's
I know,
ready.
I can tell.
Don't let him be
Definitely
a child star. Yeah, he's definitely ready for some collabs, that's for sure.
Right. Well, the one thing for me, and even seeing Romer, is that Rocksteppy is a true representation of who you are. This really authentic being that's always connected, always so generous, always ready to collaborate. And it really, for me, struck me because I'm an LA boy, as a kind of a love letter to Hollywood in some ways. I know you were being critical a little bit and sort of, satirical and sort of giving us a warning about, that people can take advantage of others. But in the end, these two brothers, they make out with the 10 grand and the Grumbles, the dog, gets the light in the sun. And I know it's a warning against, the hits are everything generation, but it's still, it's so touching. And I was just curious, did you know going into it that you wanted it to have that heartfelt message, or was it something that you found along the way?
I think that with Rocksteppy, it was something that was always very good-natured in both the satirical aspects of it and also the very wholesome nature of two very inept brothers that found a way to get what they wanted and maybe not what they needed. We're still working on the sequel, but yeah, it was definitely something where we wanted to make sure that there was a proper representation of the world that we were in. at that point, which was a very small town with a lot of people that had big dreams. And I think dependent upon, your response to it is really fascinating, because to me that denotes that you're a very optimistic and passionate person, which I know that for sure, just the amount of time that we've spent together over the years. But it is one of those movies that can cut both ways, because some people, I remember some of the feedback that we got from even South by Southwest when we tried to get it played there. The feedback was, wow, this is a really mean movie. Did everyone know that they were in on the joke? And that to me told me that the person or the people that watched it might be a little bit on the jaded side of things. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a matter of perspective. And I think that's why the movie, it resonates with the people that it resonates with. And at the same time, it didn't really find a home per se in, the traditional route of taking it to festivals and then distribution and all of those sorts of things. So, I mean, for me, it was always very good natured and had those aspects of satire, especially when it came to just the blind ambition without much tangible talent. And I think everyone encounters people like that, and or might actually be those people as well in some way, shape, or form. But I don't think we ever wanted it to lean too negative or too positive. I think we wanted it to play the way it was going to play to whoever was watching it.
That's exactly the way it felt for me. I liked that it went right in the center and was so powerful. The other thing that I really liked, and I've sort of pulled it up right here, right now, is that I noticed, like, right in the beginning, you had these incredible transitions. So we had this moment with Mr. Hamburger, and he says, like, I don't know why the brothers ended up being like that with a mother like that. And then it cuts right away to the mother, and here's mom, right? And then mom starts talking about the brothers. And then
one is Phil, one is Alan. They're good. They're good kids. They like music. When I played to them, Beethoven, Chopin, Mozart, and Bach.
And then I love how, it sort of ends with her saying, but then they grew themselves. And then it cuts to them like growing themselves, So like the way that like the edit is so strong and so powerful. And I was also curious because it's like, how did you do that? Like, because to me, it felt like, were you like writing it and then like editing it and then you knew you were going to that? Or was it, how much of it was pre-written and then you knew you were gonna cut right on that word because like the word was giving you the next chapter, And like, did you know that right from the get-go, is like that's how you were moving into the next moment,
That we found in the edit. And we I would say, in terms of the amount of versions that we have of Rocksteppy, I think we're probably we were in the 20s. In terms of, our assembly was 3 hours long, because we had over 130 hours worth of footage, because we shot almost continuously for 3 weeks as we were traveling around the United States. I think we traveled 4,700 miles, and then we workshopped it for about a year. And then we went back after we did a few screenings and, played it for friends, and then actually took it back to Fairfield and played it there. And we were just thinking about, all right, how can we tighten it up? Because I think the edit that we first showed in Fairfield was right around 90 minutes. And then we knew something that I had kind of been advocating for the whole time. I was like, we need a coda. We need to wrap up a lot of these loose ends a lot better than what we did. And the test screening, essentially, the very friendly test screening that we had, it pretty much, gave that credence. And so we ended up going and shooting a few scenes that you see at the end, where they're wearing the tracksuits and Grumbles is a success and all that kind of stuff. We shot those probably about a year after we had finished principal photography. And we shot those in Minneapolis, which is where Jake Dilley was based at the time. He's now in Los Angeles. But we spent a considerable amount of time in the edit really finessing and working those movements, and especially the transitions from one scene to the next. I mean, a lot of those were either non-actors or people that were under the impression that we were real people, and then they were responding to our realness, because it was very much rooted in a Christopher Guest style of improvisation and narrative, maybe even arguably too close to it, especially Waiting for Guffman would be the prime example. I think that was one of the only films that we screened for the entire crew before we landed on where we landed in terms of the style. But to circle back and answer another one of your questions, we had a full feature-length script that was more akin to, oddly enough, like a Wim Wenders road movie, but with an Alexander Payne sort of style. So it was going to be, we had it all scouted, we had it all planned. We met with all of the film commissions where we were going to shoot along the route and had everything buttoned up. And then all of a sudden, about a week and a half before shooting, the funding that we had that was going to give us a very comfortable 30-day shoot just went straight out the window. So
that's our group. We're Rocksteppy.
I like it.
Yeah, so,
Are you ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
How do you know you're ready?
Wait.
Well, we just kind of know. Joe.
It's so funny to see this stuff. So we were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and ultimately decided that we needed to keep some of the elements but change the rest, make it more improvisational, because the script that we were going to try to shoot, I think we both looked at each other and said, we won't enjoy this process. We'll be so worried about the minutia of the making of, and not the joy of the collaboration. And as you can see, some of the most ridiculous things that you'll ever see. But yeah, we just pretty much threw the bathwater out, but kept the baby, so to speak. We did not want to lose the elements that we found a lot of joy in and wanted to work towards. And then we just made a silly movie, which again was very tough for festivals to look at and say, oh yeah, this is going to fit really nicely between this emotionally impactful documentary and then this emotionally impactful drama. And then if we wanted a comedy, we just, whatever Paul Rudd had coming out, that was like his minor note third feature that year. We just kind of ran into those sorts of issues in terms of getting it out there ultimately in the traditional way.
I wouldn't even worry about any of that. In all honesty, like for me, and this is my perspective on things, it's like, I saw that you have it streaming on Prime now. Like you got a deal. I don't know who you got a deal with, but are you on Hulu? Are you on the others? Are you on, what, did you have a distributor or what'd you do?
No, I mean, when we were trying to distribute it, we found a lot of sharks, even for a movie like ours, which in all honesty, again, it's a silly movie. It's got heart. It has a few names that people would recognize, or at least be like, huh, let me give that a shot. but it wasn't anything that, again, had, a ton of tangibles to where distributors were just foaming at the mouth for it. And we kind of saw that pretty quickly, especially with the distributors that were interested. We got really bad deal offers, and to the point where we would have to pay them to distribute it. And we looked at that and we said, we want distribution, yes. And they're promising some elements that were very attractive to us that would get it out to hopefully a much larger audience than what Vimeo and, sort of buried in the algorithm of Amazon were at the time. But we would rather keep it ourselves than give it away for 30 years and let them do whatever they wanted to, wherever they wanted to do it. It just didn't make any sense to us. So we would rather have, all of nothing as opposed to having to pay for the privilege of saying we have a film that's been distributed by this distributor.
I am going to distribute this film. This is too good of a film. I'll figure this out. But, I do understand what you're saying. And for those of in the class, like maybe we will be able to get into this a little bit later in classes. But even with a lot of my films, there were a lot of distributors that came up and they would say things to me. I don't know if some of them are still in existence. They probably are, and maybe I need not say this, but one of them called me up and they were like, yeah, we really like your shoplifting film. Can you change the title from Shoplifting for American Apparel to American Apparel Shoplifting From? And I was like, what? I was like, the movie's already done. They're like, well, we found that independent titles do better when it's the first letter of the alphabet. Well, then I said, well, then I'm seriously effed, because my next film is called Zombie Bounty Hunter and starts with a Z. And they're like, oh, it's horror. We'll love it. We'll take it for sure. So you deal with a lot of that kind of stuff, which starts to sound like Johnny Starr from Rocksteppy, right? And the warning of the film. But to actually transition us into some of your past as an actor, which also features in a large part of your life, is doing all the commercials for Geico. And I kind of felt like Rocksteppy was also, in some ways, maybe a shout out to that, like that dreams are possible if you chase them. Maybe it's because I know your story, but I was curious if maybe you could tell the folks like the caveman for Geico. How did that happen?
So I was at Full Sail University at the time, which was my alma mater for undergrad, and I was working a job that I absolutely loved. I was an industry outreach liaison. You want to go back now? Okay. He's heard this story so much. But I was at the office and of all places, the Virginia Film Office website, because part of my job was to find crew happenings all over the US. And when I looked, I didn't see anything that day. But for some reason or another, I just got a wild hair to keep scrolling down into the casting notices. And sure enough, I found a casting notice that literally said, "Do you want to be a caveman?" ? And I was like, there's no way that's legitimate. Sorry, my son all of a sudden has a scooter indoors. So these things happen. So I basically just was like, first of all, I didn't think this was legit. And this was peak Craigslist era. So I was just kind of like, all right, I'm not going to give them any personal information, but I will see if this is legit. So I put together the world's worst acting resume that included special skills as a Rain Man-like knowledge of film and sports trivia, which is very true, and interpretive dance, which is also very true. And instead of a regular headshot, which is a nice close up of just you looking all glammed out, I did a full body shot of me doing a jumping jack in midair. I put all this together, sent it to casting on a Sunday night. By Monday afternoon, before noon, I got a phone call from casting saying, "Hey, this is so and so from casting. Are you serious about doing this?" And I was like, "Well, if you're calling me, that means that you're serious, and if you're serious, then yes, I am indeed serious." They said, "Great, we'll see you in Baltimore on Wednesday." And I was living in Orlando at the time. So out of pocket, flew up, auditioned, didn't get kidnapped. So that was good. And just went into the audition, brought a character bio of who my caveman was. And the name that I always went by was Julius Glenn, which played into some of the other cavemen. But it had all of, like, I found online some of the other character bios, and I was like, okay, so that they understand that I am legit serious about this, let me submit this as well. And then they were like, okay, you're going to be in character when you audition, so the minute you hit the room, you've got to be in character. But they started asking me as McManus Woodend questions that I was answering as my caveman Julius Glenn, which I thought was really kind of interesting. And then I figured it out after like the fifth question. I was like, wait. Everything I've said is a lie. I was saying it in character. If you want to know questions about me, I'm more than happy to do that. If you want me to stay in character, and they're like, no, let's do a couple of your questions and then so on. And then during the audition, this was back when they were still shooting on, DV tape, and the tape snapped, apparently. And I was just kind of like, whoa, okay. So all of a sudden they pulled up what I deemed web experience, which included me dancing at a Greek restaurant one Christmas party with a belly dancer in the middle of this crowded room where people were just like throwing money. And they pulled it up and saw me in full caveman mode, essentially, because I just danced around this belly dancer and got the crowd going and all that kind of stuff. And they asked me how much I had to drink, and I said not a drop. And they said, I kind of felt like they looked at each other and were like, I think we found our idiot, because again, I didn't have any real acting experience aside from all of the studying that I had done and a little bit of community theater when I was basically up until around the age of 13. And then that was it. But it does, I think the biggest takeaway from that story is I am living proof that if you give it a chance and you hit it at just the right moment and you're just the right amount of prepared for it, then you can do something that you never thought in your wildest dreams you would ever get to do. No, this is one of my favorites.
Hey, John, 5 more minutes and we're out of here. Don't worry, the new guy will be here.
Hey, skippers. Oh, man. Can you send a steward to grab my bags? I'm going to grab a cappuccino.
Not everyone can make it on a crab boat.
You guys need anything? No?
But everyone could save money with Geico. It's so easy. Even he can do it. Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
And yes, we actually shot that in Alaska. I don't know if any of you are fans or have parents that are fans of that show, but I watched a few episodes before I went and shot it just to kind of get to know those guys that I was working with. And every episode had this big twist where everything was going great, and then all of a sudden the weather came in, and I'm just like, okay, that's creative editing. And then when we were shooting that, we were shooting it on 35 millimeter, and they had a video tap into a laptop, so they were able to ingest the footage, and they had an editor there who was able to cut. And that's the first time that I had seen that and seen it done effectively. And I was like, okay, that is something that I will do for any shoot that I'm ever on, for sure. Because what happened is in the middle of that shoot, all of a sudden, that weather came in, and it was legitimate. Jonathan Hillstrand, who's one of the brothers of the Time Bandit, he looked up, does this, and then he looks over at the director and he says, "You guys got about 27 minutes before it starts snowing sideways." And it was a gorgeous day, like you saw in the commercial. It was 20 degrees, it was sunny, it was absolutely beautiful. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, nah. And then I was like, he wouldn't say that unless he knew that that was indeed going to be the case. And it was. I mean, it literally got so nasty. It went from 20 degrees and beautiful, no wind, no gusts or anything like that, to -40 blizzard condition. Like literally the wind was I think 60-mile-an-hour gusts. And absolutely, I mean, the trailer that I was in, as we were backing out of the jetty, almost tipped over into the water, which would not have been good for anyone on it, including myself. But because we had an editor there who was able to, on the quick, cut together what we had and then tell the director, okay, we need this shot, this shot, this shot. Can we get this done in 20 minutes? And then do a quick wrap, get everything off of the jetty, get it off of the dock, and then be safe. And sure enough, to everyone's credit, everyone stepped up, nailed whatever mark they had to be on, whatever line they were saying, got enough coverage to where it was visually interesting without being overcut. So, I think it maybe even played in the favor of that particular spot, because there wasn't so much coverage that it was just, your attention never stayed on one thing for too long. But yeah, that was a fun spot to shoot, and filled with avalanches and blizzards and all sorts of crazy things. But yeah, that was one of my favorites for sure.
I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the students because I know they have a lot of questions. So whoever wants to start, just unmute yourself, ask away.
I can jump in. So earlier you had mentioned the idea of joy.
Probably start with your name again.
Oh,
just in case. Yeah.
Of course, just in case. Oh, hello again. My name is Naziah. And my question is going back to the concept of joy. And I wonder, how do you balance, your joy and passion for filmmaking with the inevitable stresses that come with it?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there, Naziah. It is a balance, and it's a precarious one at times. It's a beautiful one at others. Not to sound too mystical about the process, but you never really know what's going to happen, even when you've planned it. I think, and I might be butchering this quote, but there's a great David Fincher quote where you don't know that you're a filmmaker until you have 5 shots left at the end of the day, and you can only get 2. And you figure out which ones are the most essential and then which ones aren't. And, something I do with my students, especially a room full of new filmmakers, I will never say young, but of new filmmakers, is, whenever you ask the question, all right, who wants to be a director? Everyone's hand in the room goes up. And then I tell them one way to be an effective director is to have someone follow you around for an entire day and do nothing but ask you questions about everything that's going on in your immediate happening. And if you can handle that, then that's first of all, if you can find anyone to commit to doing that, that's a special person, and have them on your set. But it's important because you are faced with endless questions about things that you may have never even thought about. And it happened a lot on Rocksteppy because we had a small, tight-knit crew. it got to a point after a few days where, because it became almost overly collaborative in a way that wasn't going to be beneficial, we literally said, okay, here are notebooks. If you have an idea during the middle of the take, write it down. And then after we get a couple in the can, so to speak, then throw it out. But it can't just be a free for all in a way to where it doesn't benefit the production, because then it can create a situation where everyone is kind of a de facto director. You always want those ideas, and you want to make sure that those ideas are generated. And that's part of the joy of the production apparatus of filmmaking, because it's now something where it's not one person being dictatorial, like the auteur theory, which, again, there's places for that, especially when it comes to having a very precise vision. But when you're dealing with improvisational aspects, you've got to take it from everywhere, and you've got to maintain that balance, because if not, then it's going to start to lean one way or the other, and that could, then you've got to go all the way this way in order to counterbalance it and bring it back to right. So to me, that's where you can find that joy, is through the balance of it. And that doesn't mean accept a mediocre idea and do it, just because you want to appease, the people that are working with you and that are putting in the time and the effort. But what it does mean is that if a suggestion is almost there, then you can take it somewhere else. I mean, that happened a lot with Caveman, where I would get lines thrown at me, and sometimes even line readings. And I would take that and run with it, because I knew that if I did it verbatim, it wouldn't hit. It wouldn't spring from me in a way that was as honest and legitimate as possible. So I think finding that balance and maintaining that joy is crucial, because shooting a film is tough, even when you're amongst friends. I mean, I've seen friends walk away from projects becoming complete enemies, and it's heartbreaking to see that. But if you go in with the best of intention, where you just want to create something fun or cool, or at the very least have something to say about it, even if it's not as serious and overtly impactful. That's the sneaky thing about Rocksteppy is that, much like we were talking about earlier, your perspective as a human being going into that screening will dictate the elements that you respond to. And having that ability, especially for a film that is overtly silly, and that's the fun and the joy of watching it with an audience, because everyone's going to take something away from it, and it's not just going to be, the worst thing you can do is just be like, oh yeah, it was okay. If you ever have that reaction, then that would bring me no joy as a filmmaker, because I want you to have a reaction, even if you don't like it. Awesome. What was it that didn't resonate? How can we talk about it? It's funny. I just went and saw Megalopolis a few weeks ago when it first came out, and I went with a few friends, and some of them are film critics, and we talked about it. And the more I thought about it, I was like, this isn't an outlier in Francis Ford Coppola's filmography. It is very much in lockstep with everything that he has done for decades. And the biggest thing is that his big note to all of his actors and all of the filmmakers on that set was to be brave. And bravery has a foolish aspect of it, but it also means to take chances. And that, I mean, all Rocksteppy was a chance. It was just one big chance after another, because we had a minimal production budget. I think it was 9,000 when we started shooting, because again, we lost a ton of funding before a week and a half before. So, you know, it was one of those things where all of a sudden we had to find the joy in the process. Otherwise, we were going to be absolutely miserable making the script that we had spent the better part of 4 or 5 months working on. You know, it went from a 141-page script to right around 93 was what our shooting script was going to be. And we cut a lot out. We streamlined it. We made it so that it was coherent and flowed. And then once we couldn't make that script, we outlined goals for every scene and then shot those scenes and then had things happen to us. Like, you know, I hope I'm not ruining it for those of you who haven't seen it, but we literally ran into a deer. Like, that was not staged whatsoever. That was day 3. We're finally leaving. We're starting our road trip. And within an hour of leaving Fairfield, Iowa, I'm sitting up in the front with Jimmy Morrison, who was just an everyman on that set, and the driver of our Winnebago, and we're just having this conversation. Spirits are high, all that kind of stuff, and then literally at the corner of my eye, I see this deer line up on the side of the road, and just almost time it perfectly. You know, and then boom, right in the middle. I'm like, deer, deer, deer. And then that was it. And then we were sidelined for the better part of a day, which ate into the actual schedule that we had, to the point where I'm looking up flights during South by Southwest to Austin, Texas, which are insanely expensive. And I was like, but you know, if I don't have to eat and we get 3 of us there to shoot it, then that's perfect. But yeah, there were a couple of milestones and a couple of locations that we had to hit. Yeah, exactly. That was legit. That is not production designed at all. Nor were the bag of almonds that Jake is eating in that scene. But once we hit that deer, we got out. Like, we stopped. I made sure everyone was okay. I made sure the equipment was okay. And then once everything was good, no one was super shell shocked. I was like, all right, let's roll. We got it. We got to get this. We got to while it's still fresh. And again, we were there for 24 hours. And I can't tell you how many people stopped to ask us whether or not we were keeping that deer. So there you go. That's the Midwest for you. But again, all of that, while it was stressful, and just to wrap a bow onto your question, all of that, despite being stressful, was joyful because we were figuring it out, despite the fact that we were dealt a bum hand, and we did it in a way to where it made sense for the narrative, and that was mildly funny, you know, or at the very least was like, huh, I've never seen that in a movie before. So yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
I love that dowsing rod approach to play and fun, and that you also brought up Francis Ford Coppola, because I actually thought about Francis Ford Coppola and Megalopolis a lot when I was watching Rocksteppy.
No way.
I did. Because
we have a full budget.
No, because I was thinking about the level of your commitment to play and fun in the film. And even as the Geico Caveman, like how you described how you took that interview so seriously, right? That like you went in and you like got into character the way you went to get the job. And now I'm even thinking of Nazaya and the script that Nazaya is writing about. You know, you hear me, Nazaya, what I'm thinking? You know, that script you're writing is like that, straight up like that. So it's like, to me, I think it's that level of commitment to play that's so powerful about you, McManus, that leads to the success of the acting, the success of doing the project, And I think it really connects with what's the next part of our introduction to the video art class when we get into acting for camera, we get into short films now. Because Coppola has been saying, right, with Megalopolis, the main thing he's been saying is like, okay, in the age of artificial intelligence and everything that's going on, the main thing that's filmmaking is really storytelling and acting, right? And I would go so far as to say it's a commitment to play. It's a commitment to having fun. And I think you have that, McManus.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, it's akin to what a professional, sports star does, or and I'm not equating myself to them at all in any other respect.
No, you are though. That's the key. That they need to know this, right? It's like that. It's a commitment to play. It's a commitment to fun.
Yeah,
That's what makes it, you know.
and it does take discipline as well. It doesn't mean that you have to be serious about it all the time. For instance, my son over here is again back on the scooter and running around. But it does have to be committed, and if it's not, then it won't ring true. And that's the biggest thing with what we did on Rocksteppy is, so many people did not know that we were not real people and interacting in real situations. And, we let them know after the reactions that we were indeed, we're making a film and we're just characters. And they're like, oh man, you guys are killing it. Keep doing it. So, those sorts of things, especially when it comes to being a grown person and doing make-believe things, you have to play, because if not, then it's just going to turn into a job. You're going to be miserable. You're going to complain about craft services and, about, why aren't they ready for me to shoot? And in all honesty, I think that's why they kept me around as long as they did for the Caveman. There are a lot of people who could play that role. I definitely got very lucky and hit it at just the right moment and with the right amount of preparation. But the biggest thing about it was I understood the entire process. So it wasn't an issue of me not understanding, like, oh, okay, they need an extra 45 minutes to light this scene. I'm not going to be an actor per se and get frustrated by that and say, well, I want to shoot now, because I don't think anyone really wants to be around people like that, to be perfectly honest with you. And more importantly, they're going to take the time to make you look better. So you need to allow them that time and just be prepared and ready when it's time to do it. And that's exactly how I looked at it. That, and apparently I was told that I have Ron Perlman's disease, because I was able to be in that stuff for, I think the longest I was ever in it was 25 hours straight. And we shot a ton of stuff. They rented out an entire, stadium, a hockey arena in this case, to shoot it. And again, like, I looked at it, I was like, I'm getting paid to do this, and this is really fun. Like, I don't understand how it could ever turn in respect to why this isn't happening or why that isn't happening. So I think, again, maintaining that joy throughout your career, and it's weird because I tell my students this. I've been in the industry for 25 years now, which is really weird to say to me. But without that joy and that enthusiasm for whatever it is that you're doing, even if it has no commercial prospects or has all of the prospects in the world, if you're not enjoying what you're doing, what are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? You have to ask yourself that.
You can go ahead once you raise your hand. Just go ahead, Pete.
Hi, yeah, hi, McManus. I'm Peem, and taking things, I mean, that was a great answer. Thank you so much. And taking things in a slightly different direction, just kind of repeating some information that Pirooz already mentioned was that so you did your undergraduate at the Full Sail University, you studied at the David Lynch graduate school, and you did your PhD at the European Graduate School. And I just wanted to ask a little about how how your academic journey kind of contributed to your filmmaking journey. And I mean, I know all three of your studies were in filmmaking, and so I was wondering how it contributed to your filmmaking journey as a whole, and also to Rocksteppy, and also kind of a follow-up question to that. I know this is quite loaded, but and feel free if you don't feel comfortable answering this, is kind of how you would compare yourself, having gone through three schools compared to those you've worked with who may have gone to one film school or no film school.
I think I'll answer your last question first. I think that there are so many paths to get to where you ultimately want to be in this industry that it's insane. I think people that and this is something I did when I was younger, and presumably when I was about your age, is that I looked at the career paths of the directors that I deeply respected. And the thing that I saw was, someone might have broken in their mid to late 20s, someone might have hit it in their 30s, someone went to film school, someone didn't. There are so many examples to all of the different paths that you can take in order to get to ultimately where you want to go, that it's great because you can ultimately choose your own path if you are committed to doing this as a vocation, as a career, as a way of life for many people. I look at my academic background. I am the son of teachers, and both of my parents taught. So for me, it's interesting. When I was on set behind the camera, my career was always, oh yeah, you're doing a great job, but you should really be in front of the camera. And I'd be like, no, like that's pretty unrealistic. And then all of a sudden, I'm in front of the camera, and in a pretty crazy way. And then when I'm in front of the camera, all of a sudden people are like, yeah, you're killing it out there. Like you're doing a great job. But you're really knowledgeable about so many aspects of this industry or this discipline or whatever the case may be. You should really think about teaching at some point. And all of these things were things that were in my head and that I wanted to do at some point in my life and career. And again, I think to answer your question, the way that my career and in terms of my academic career has stacked up with other people is that it's my career. This is my path to ultimately where I've been, where I'm going, and then where I may still go. I'm not that old yet. And who knows, I could have one of those weird like Ken Howard careers where or even like Gene Hackman, who didn't even start acting until his mid 40s, and he was off to the races after that. But excuse me. But I think that another point that I wanted to make is just to stay open and as fluid as you can to the opportunities, because they'll come out of nowhere, literally on the Virginia Film Office website, or, I found out about EGS literally looking up one of my, at the time, favorite directors, Gaspar Noé, the French Argentinian filmmaker, and he taught there. And I said, wait, they let him teach at a school? I gotta check this out. And then, applied, and then questioned the application process and all that kind of stuff. And finally was like, this is my place. This is where I need to be, so that I can learn from amazing filmmakers like Terrence Malick and Wim Wenders and Catherine Briot, and Tom Kalin, Mike Figgis, like all of these, Volker Schlondorf, like all of these amazing people that I have behind me in my film collection. I can actually sit down and ask them questions and like have a drink with them in a bar that's a cave, on the top of the Swiss. Like this sounds too good to be true, and then it is, and you're there and you're doing it. And so I mean, I've been very unorthodox from the jump. I think I knew that the traditional college mode for me would have been disaster. I had a chance to go to UCF and FSU, and then was set to go to a small school called Flagler College in St. Augustine. And I just knew that I wasn't going to flourish the way that I needed to if I went to a school that was a lot more traditional. So all of these schools had very accelerated learning aspects to them, and that appealed to me. And so that, by 19, I'm working with ABC Sports and traveling around. And then when I'm not working with them, I'm working on these films, and, they're small, low budget independent films. But, all of a sudden I'm 19 years old and I'm a location manager instead of just a PA. And, all of these opportunities were discovered because I was open to them. And without that openness, you're going to miss so much of what's going on here and so much of what's going on here. So being as 360 without getting whiplash, and again, that's a skill that you'll learn, through time. It's important to have that, because then you can see, well, all right, I'm not doing anything, production wise, so let me start writing. Okay, all right, I'm writing this thing, and I think there's some people that I know that would be up for shooting this, and we can get some actors and we can pull them from here. So I think being open and letting organic opportunities come to you as opposed to chasing them. When I've chased, doesn't work. But when I step back and not that I let things happen, but I let things start to happen, and then can go where I need to go, that's when, to me, that's when the magic happens, and that's when I get really lucky. Does that kind of answer what you were asking?
In a way, yeah. Thank you.
I'll take it away.
And Peem, if you need to get even more specific with like something you're searching for in yourself, to make that, if there's anything missing in the question or you want to take the question further, go for it in this moment, because I feel like there's a question within your question as well.
I mean, yes, but I think the other kind of question I wanted to ask really was just kind of, what was the David Lynch graduate school like? What was that experience like? What were the stuff you did?
It was it was excellent and very arduous, because it was the first class that they had ever offered at that level, and there were many aspects of it that, and the production end of the David Lynch graduate school isn't around anymore. It is just purely screenwriting, and the screenwriting is fantastic. Like, I'm not going to say I'm jealous of what they're doing there now, because we were the first class. We were the guinea pigs in so many ways, and there were a lot of aspects that were fantastic. I mean, we were essentially isolated. Fairfield is in the middle of nowhere, so we didn't have distractions. It was in a deeply spiritual environment, because everyone was practicing transcendental meditation every day. and all of that. And that's something I had already been practicing before I went there. And, at the root of it, meditating twice a day for 20 minutes each time and getting yourself right within yourself, that's never a bad thing. So for me, it was a no-brainer to give that a shot, especially if what they were offering was true, which is come to Fairfield, Iowa, and make a feature film. And that is exactly what I wanted. I wanted that experience. I was in my early 30s at that time, so I knew that I was ready for it emotionally. It was just now a matter of what is the project going to be, and then meeting Jake and connecting with him the way that we connected. We looked at each other and were like, this is a no-brainer. We need to make something together. So that's exactly what we did. But we were definitely guinea pigs too. I mean, there were so many logistical issues that, again, because of my experience, I was able to help them sort of see before they happened, and then help them develop good practices in terms of, if we've got 6 projects that are going to be shooting within, a few weeks of each other, we need to make sure that this is super scheduled. And do we have enough equipment? Do we need to rent? Do we need to all of these things? So, even with Rocksteppy, initially we were going to shoot on a Red 1, which compared to the Reds now, thing was a brick. I mean, to get that, and then the lens that they had, which was a big PL zoom lens, it was about 40 to 45 pounds. So, to go and to have the flexibility to shoot anywhere would not have worked. So we ended up despite the fact that we wanted to shoot at 4K, but our budget didn't give us the opportunity to. So we shot it in 1080, but we shot it on smaller cameras that we could shoot multiple cameras and not create, an awareness of the fact that we were shooting a movie. We didn't have boom mics and all that kind of stuff. So, to be more direct about your question, that education allowed me to understand exactly how to shoot a film in ways that when you're learning it as an undergrad, you sometimes can get stuck in those methods and in those ruts, and not very flexible when it comes to, it would have been great to shoot 4K, but if we were going to do that 9,000 would have gone to a camera and a lens package, and that's it. And then everyone is, fending for themselves as far as food. And if you have ever been on a crew and you're not well fed, that is a recipe for disaster. Because everyone gets hangry, hour 8 rolls around and you're just like, what am I doing here? Why do I have just peanut butter and bread? Like, this is awful. So, and those are aspects that I learned in undergrad, that if you have a hangry crew, it's over before it starts, honestly. But, David Lynch prepared us for the reality that things are not going to go the way that they are planned initially. And that's okay. Because again, if you find the joy and the bliss of the process, then ultimately, if you follow that, it's going to take you to places that might even be more exciting than if you stuck to the script, so to speak.
And even, I think, Pim, getting that answer is a testament to who you are and to who Leah is, that you're already doing all the right things at Rochester. You have, this capability and this skill set to organize and bring things together in ways that McManus was already doing for that school. So it's like, you don't need to go out there and find that for someone else. You already have that skill and you're bringing it here, right? So maybe the one thing that you can bridge that McManus is talking about is this idea of the openness to, if the accident is there, or if budgetary constraints are there, then maybe think of different ways of creating the film. It might not be with like the most expensive gear, but can you still make a great film? Yeah, it's possible. And maybe it's better because of that.
Yeah,
Yeah, I completely agree. Sorry. And I think that's just one thing that I want to praise about the University of Rochester students as well, is that all of us are just, at least from what I've seen in the film community here, we're just so good at being flexible and making the most out of what we have.
you have to, and you have to be accepting of the ideas and wherever they come from. If they're good, I mean, that's something, again, directly from the mouth of David Lynch when I got a chance to meet him. You never turn down a good idea, especially if it comes from an unlikely source. Now, that doesn't mean that they then are the trusted confidant and can say whatever, whenever, about whatever. It means that idea works for that moment, and run with it and see where it takes you. Because again, if you're not flexible, especially when you're working in low to no budget types of films and filmmaking, then you're not going to enjoy the process at all, and then the result will suffer, because frustration can permeate throughout a set very quickly. And that doesn't mean fake enthusiasm is a good idea either, because that can also permeate and drive a crew nuts. But being honest and being proactive in the steps that you take in order to create, it's an essential part of the process. Because if you don't, then you're not going to enjoy it at all, and then the result will not be anywhere near what you were hoping for.
Let's do a couple more questions here. Folks that wanted to ask anything? Yeah.
I have one. Hello, my name's Mara again. I was the one who was interested in your experiences with art on set. Um, and so I guess I have two questions. I don't know how dense they are, but I'll put them together.
Okay.
So the first one is, from an actor's perspective, what elements of the set or design make the biggest difference to your ability to fully embody your character? And in the overall industry, this is the second one. How valuable is versatility in a set designer today, or an artistic person working on a film set, considering the mix of traditional physical sets and digitally enhanced environments? Is the industry looking for artists, designers who are skilled in both forms of craftsmanships? And how are they valued?
So to answer your first question, setting a scene and creating an environment is essential for an actor to walk into that environment and say, absolutely, I am this person, or what, I can get to that place that I need to. Without it, and without the tangible elements, actors love props. You give an actor a prop that actually means something to a scene, and they will love you forever. Because without it, it's like you overthink it. What do I do with my hands? How should I stand? And sometimes those actually work if you're playing a character that in that moment needs to be awkward and unsure of themselves. But if you are an actor that is in a scene where there's danger involved, and you're playing in the scene with someone that needs to also feel that danger, because maybe there's a third actor or actress that is coming in and they're the antagonist. You need to have an environment that will allow you to create and to perform in that respect, that brings an authenticity and a legitimacy to the performance. Because if not, then you're just relying on maybe what you've seen or seen other people do, and it's not springing from within in a way that's meaningful. And having those artistic flourishes and elements in the production design, in the set decoration, in the props, having those elements to where you can, in your performance, walk over to a kitchen table and that's already set for dinner, and this person is coming at you, the antagonist is coming at you, and all of a sudden, even if it's not in the script, you can grab something. You can grab a candlestick, you can grab a fork, you can grab a plate, and create that sense of safety and embody that self-defense mechanism that character may have. And without it, or without an element that will give them that safety, then that scene is going to be completely different. If they don't have something to defend themselves, then hopefully they have a couch to jump over and maneuver around, so that that person that is now chasing them doesn't have a clear shot towards them. And that's a really kind of base example, but it rings true to the fact and the importance of having practicality, so that as a performer, you've got something. And that actually goes into your second question as well, because having as much of an understanding and a tangible experience in the practical and in the virtual, that will put you above and beyond. Because, again, going back to Megalopolis, the moments that ring truer were the moments that had practical elements to them. Especially with Unreal Engine. If anyone's watching this video years from now, this will be completely dated. But having photorealistic backgrounds to where, as the camera moves and as the actors move within that scene, and having a few practical elements, that, I mean, we've already seen that that's where, especially low budget filmmaking, is going to go. Because if you can find a space that has an LED wall and runs Unreal Engine, all of a sudden you can make a lot of elements and a lot of locations that you couldn't go to look and feel natural. But when it was back in the day where I think a good example was the first episode 1 of Star Wars, the Phantom Menace, where the actors are literally reacting to a tennis ball that is taped 40 feet up in the air, because it's supposed to be this alien creature that is just being described to them because it hasn't even been created yet. That's when it gets a little tough for a performer. But if you've already created it in previs as a craftsperson, to where you're able to then, articulate and show what it looks like to the actor, so that when they are looking at that reference point, they can embody that fear or that anger or whatever emotion that they need to in order to get the performance to where it needs to be. So having the practical, tangible elements and disciplines under your belt, so that when you're doing set design, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, well, we only need a third of this because the other 2/3 we're going to shoot on a screen, we're going to shoot on reel. Then that's fantastic, because you'll know how to make both of those elements work. If you just focus on one over the other, then I think you're potentially you could still be very successful at what you're doing, but you won't be as well-rounded in your abilities to where you can say, well, hey, if we don't want to generate this because this is going to cost $120,000, I can build a practical portion of this set for, $20,000. And all of a sudden, that producer and your production designer and everyone else, you're the hero in their eyes. You're now essential, not only on that project, but you better believe on future projects, they will call you 10 out of 10, unless you mess up later on down the road. But in all honesty, the more you know about the more you know, the better off you're going to be. Again, I go back to the example of this, despite the fact that I have no formal acting experience, I understood the filmmaking experience and the process therein. So when it was time to, okay, we need to relight this and we've got 45 minutes, I'm not frustrated by the process. I'm very understanding of it because, again, they're trying to make it better. And understanding all of the disciplines and as many as you can, especially when it comes to production design, absolutely, you will set yourself apart without a doubt.
Thank you so much. That answered my question.
Awesome. Yay.
I do have to get going, but I just wanted to say I'm super grateful that you're here, speaking with us and answering our questions. It's really valuable to us to have this sort of community here at the U of R.
And I appreciate your question and you taking the time to be with us tonight, Mara. Really do.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we head off, and because I know we did about 12 minutes of introductions, I want to make sure whether Alexandra or Fong had a question before we take off here.
Yeah, I had a question. I was like, I'm a senior, so I'm graduating soon, and I'm hoping to apply to like different schools. And you mentioned the David Lynch program, so I'm looking into that. But is there any other programs that you recommend like applying to?
It all depends on what it is that you want to do. If you're strictly screenwriting, and of course where you want to do it, because your New York and LA are fantastic. Those are great places, especially if you want to get into the industry. Absolutely, you can never go wrong. However, they're also very cost prohibitive on many, many levels. So looking at smaller programs, maybe even the David Lynch screenwriting program, even though I am not a graduate of it, I will advocate for it because it's a low residency program. So basically you would go there for a set amount of time, and then you would have check-ins and other coursework along the way. But on the whole, you could, stay in Rochester, and if that's where your family's from and that's where you want to build your life, and then there you go. So, there are other low residency MFA screenwriting programs to look into. I think Emerson has one as well, which is really good, and they're a little more. Wait, Emerson's where? Based in Boston, right? I think so. If not, then
yes, Emerson's in Boston. Yep.
Yeah. So, a low residency is good, but if you want to get like into the nuts and bolts of it and into the aspects of the industry, then yeah, you look at schools in New York, you look at schools in LA, you look at schools in Atlanta. I've had a lot of students recently move to Atlanta because it rents a little bit cheaper, although that's slowly not becoming the case. But they have a ton of dedicated productions every year, although that number is starting to recede a little bit as well. So it's, I think that it's not as New York and LA centric as it used to be, especially when I was coming out of film school. But nowadays, it doesn't even mean that you have to physically devote yourself to moving to a town and then that's that. especially with little residency MFA programs for screenwriting. There are some really good programs out there that you can learn a ton from and write the things that you want to write, and have the freedom and the flexibility of your life, as opposed to like, I've got school. I have to try to figure out when I can work to pay for rent. It's not as cut and dry as it used to be. Now it's definitely worth looking into, especially if you know for sure that that's the route you want to take and the way that you want to take it. Does that kind of make sense?
Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, let's hear it for McManus. Thank you so much for giving us your time. You've been very generous. We're going to stay with the heart and follow the dog for sure, and try and have as much fun and play that you've shown us. So we're very appreciative here at University of Rochester for you being with us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I had a great time. And please, at any point, if you need to get in touch with me, if you've got another question that popped up, I'm the only McManus Woodend on the planet Earth ever. So I'm very easy to find. I have a website, McManusWoodend.com, or you can track me down through the University of Southern Indiana. I have an email address there. I can give it to y'all, later on if you want. It's totally up to you. If you want to just even chat movies, I'm up for that as well.
So kind of you. All right, if you want to unmute yourselves and say thank you, let's hear it for McManus. Go ahead and unmute yourselves. I'll go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brother wanted to say thank you as well.
Oh, he's so cute. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan.
All right, everybody.
Take care and thanks so much.
Stay with the heart. Follow the door. Baby, rock and roll, baby, rock and roll.